The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
My first question goes to both of you. What are currently the most frequent questions that you are getting from the investors about what's going on in Georgia in terms of more dependence on Russia's economy and in terms of going forward with the European future? John, please, and then I'll come back.
Thank you very much for this question. I can speak for our members from the European Business Association. These are members who are European companies operating in Georgia and Georgian companies exporting to Europe. So the Russia part is not really for us that on the high level, although the questions are there. And I think the most question I get now in the situations where Georgia is in is the image of Georgia. Because that is so important for European investors when they are here in Georgia operating, or that if they want to invest in Georgia even, if the image internationally is not okay, the investor will wait. So that is very important, that there is a very good image, a very good communication, what is going on.
So what builds this image for them, since they have some questions, something is not right there, right?
Everybody has to do his task on that one to building the image. Even me personally, is doing this task. Next month, I'm visiting in Brussels the CIAPME Congress. This is the Centre Entrepreneurs for the SME businesses, which is more than 500 European businesses, associations in Europe. We're meeting there, we're representing Georgia. We're telling, hey, we have an EBA Georgia, we are there present also, and we think we should invite our businesses to invest in Georgia, and so the local business also who are here also can benefit for it, so we can have more business and we can just do our daily tasks.
Fady, what are some of the most frequent questions you are getting from your investors?
How safe is Georgia now? This is one, of the questions that come pretty frequently. You know, the investors who have committed to Georgia now are quite jumpy. First of all, because of what's going on in the region, and then regarding what's going on internally in Georgia. I mean, the shift in direction from west to north. And this makes the investors pretty nervous. Because, you know, even after the Saakashvili era, when Saakashvili lost the elections and the Georgian dream came to power, we used to receive those questions. What about the Georgian dream? I mean, what if they go back to Russia? And we always told them, no, the Georgian dream is continuing the same Western path as the former government. But now we see that there is a change in direction. And this is worrying everybody. And I know a couple of investors who gave orders already to sell their assets here. And I was speaking to Papuna earlier, the vice governor of the National Bank, and I told them, I mean, some people, some foreigners here are starting to transfer back their money outside Georgia. They're not, they're kind of nervous about what could happen. So, of course, what's going on, the policy of the government, the regional situation is making investors and Georgian businesses pretty jumpy.
When you're saying that the main question is how safe is Georgia, what does safe in this context mean? Is it the fear of war, that Russia might start war in Georgia, or is it connected with Georgia's aspirations towards its Euro-Atlantic?
No, safe, this means will the economies continue to grow? What will happen? Is my money safe here? Is my investment safe here? It's not related to a war that could happen. It's more that the people are kind of worried about their money, about their investment in the country.
John, you were talking about the image and how we should build the image of Georgia. Probably you meant pro-European and pro-Western image of Georgia, definitely. Yes. Today, is it clear to the European investors that you represent in Georgia what is Georgia's government stance on international sanctions? Because for them it is very important that these sanctions are met, right?
I must say, it's maybe strangely, I don't get this question much from my European investors. They are doing their business. They are not on a sanction list, so they don't have any direct influence on this. What I see and what I hear is that the international sanctions, the ones who are in place, are followed up by the government. That's what I can tell about it. I cannot say now okay, is it enough, is it not enough? I'm not a politician. We are businessmen. And as long as I see that the businesses can do their business, that's important for us. And for the moment, this works. Our businesses can do their businesses, albeit again, the Georgian image should be more pro-European. And I would like to make a small comment on that one. The European investors in Georgia, they are convinced, the pro-European, because they are here. They see it on a day-to-day basis. They meet with the people on the street, everybody. It's more the problem for potential investors. Europeans who say, maybe we go to the Georgian market, they are waiting for the moment because they don't understand the choice of Georgia, how pro-European or not, they don't understand it. And we just need to make sure to make it more clear that our path is going pro-European. We have our vision. Doing business in Georgia will be the same in doing Europe, and we're going to keep on working on that.
I remember you said in the interview that we were just airing in this program, and you said that even though 12 points are not directly about doing business in Georgia, it's all about that.
Absolutely. So the 12-point agreement, this is not a political thing. This is a thing that business already for 5 years is mentioning. Each point of it you can directly relate to business. And the European Union, in my view, is not asking a 12-point agreement just to mark the dots, can you do this correct? No, they gave this 12-point agreement based to make sure that the business can flourish. Let's go to the most difficult one, the rule of law. There is an issue in Georgia with the rule of law, and I will not say that the issue is from corrupt judges or something. That's what I'm mentioning. I'm mentioning trust. You need to create a trust. This is exactly what the 12-point program also says. We need to create trust in the legal system, which a business, which an investor needs.
Yes, but without practice, trust cannot be built, right? So this still means reforming it to the roots.
It is a long road, but we are there, and we should go further. We should not stop with that.
Yes. Fady, if you listen to the Prime Minister lately, I mean, he says that, for example, this growing relations with Russia, this is a purely economic thing. And even restoring these direct flights, we should not be looking at it as versus to Georgia's European future. Do you agree with that?
No.
Why?
I will tell you why. You know, when you are partner with somebody, you cannot stab them in the back with the knife. Today, the West considers that Georgia is stabbing them in the back by alleviating the pressure that they are creating on Russia. So, maybe the government is not shortcutting the sanctions per se, but you know, the government is not a private company where the lawyers are saying, yes, this you can do because you are in the gray zone, it's not really shortcutting. The government has a partnership agreement with the EU and is closely related to the United States. And through its actions and opening the links with Russia and facilitating the life of Russian citizens who are coming here and the planes and all this, they are undermining the collective effort of the West to put pressure on Russia. And that's why the West is very angry. Now, to come back to sanctions, maybe they're not shortcutting the sanctions, but they are opening the way to secondary sanctions. Secondary sanctions is, for example, you have this airplane from Azimuth that lands in Georgia, and then they discover that they have a problem with one of the turbines. And then this turbine needs to be replaced, and they install a turbine here on the plane, this is shortcutting the sanction. And this opens the way for secondary sanctions. So it is not a joke, you know, to go on this very thin line. And this is very worrying. As a matter of fact, there have been pretty worrying messages from the US Department of State 2 days ago, yesterday, I think, we read it, that sanctions could be slapped on Georgia anytime soon. And if this happens, it will be a disaster for the country because a lot of foreign companies will stop doing business with Georgia. A lot of correspondents abroad will stop doing business with Georgia. So I believe that the government should think very wisely how to handle it and stop poking the bear all the time, because one day the bear will wake up from its hibernation and just slap them and throw them out.
From the purely economic point of view, do you think that this restoring this direct flights and visa-free regime will help Georgia's economy grow and will make us richer and prosperous?
Let me tell you, we had this conversation here maybe a couple of months ago where I told you that the government is purposefully strengthening the economic ties with Russia to the point where one day they will come and say, you know, if we stop now doing this, then Russia will close on us, and then it will be a disaster for our economy. And this is what today the Prime Minister said. This means this is a very well-designed, elaborate scheme that started several months ago or a year ago to bring us to the point where we are. Now, if we go into figures, I will give you some figures that can be very telling. In 2003, the total foreign economic activity with Russia, foreign economic activity includes total import, total exports, total remittances, FDI, and money from travelers. The total economic activity was $350 million. It represented 8% of the GDP at that time. In 2012, it was $1.3 billion. It represented 8% of the GDP. In 2022, it's $5.5 billion. It represents 22% of the GDP. So imagine, we jumped from 8% at the end of the Saakashvili's term to 22%. 22% is about 1/4 of our economy is hostage to Russia today. And it's a very well elaborate plan conceived together between the Georgian government and the Russian government to make sure that we become economic hostage of Georgia, which is a super dangerous thing, and it is happening. And today the Prime Minister said, what will happen if we stop the planes? Then we will lose our economy. But you brought us to this point.
John, do you see this growing dependency on Russia's economy? And I'm asking you this because every strategic partner of Georgia, and you know that I had tons of interviews with them, the main message is to the government is please try everything not to become more dependent on Russia's economy.
Yeah, I can understand them also. I would like to point what Fady mentioned. We agree somewhere to disagree on that point a little bit. Mm-hmm. That in my views, bringing investment to Georgia, even if it comes from Russia, and if Russia taking this, and if Georgia taking the money away, I'm sorry, this is less money the Russians can invest on bombs in Ukraine. On the other hand, I think we as businessmen here, we are very lucky. We are not politicians on both parties. We are not in opposition or not in the government. They need to make very clear decisions on that one. And that's why maybe the nuance a little bit, that I think that, yes, okay, government could have been more, when they get these kind of opportunities from Russia, be careful, discuss with your partners, the European Union, America, consult with them, and then come with an answer what Georgia is deciding. But have more communication on that thing before you immediately start by saying let's go for it, because again it comes back on the image that you get a dependency at the end of the day. But again, I'm not a specialist. At the end of the day, what happened now is that again Russia made a small little comment there, gave a flight, and the whole polarization in Georgia is again flaring up, which one of the main things is the problem in Georgia. Polarization, that you have people against these things, in front of these things. There is not a black and white. There is a gray zone. We have to admit it. This is the life we are living in. And we need to make good decisions, thoughtful decisions, and we have to take our time and not immediately jump into the one thing to the other thing, because it's only getting worse for the image of Georgia.
What contributes to the gray zone today, in your opinion? Because what we hear from Georgia's strategic partners, it's pretty simple and it's pretty black and white with Russia and Ukraine and the geopolitical.
Yes, they didn't do it correctly. Of course, the strategic partner, and they are very diplomatic. I can clearly see that they are very diplomatic, but giving a clear answer, because they're getting already the answer from the Georgian government immediately, and even the opposition also is not working with that. You need to be a bit more nuanced, have a meeting, have a parliament to make discussions inside. Use a parliament and discuss before you make a decision as a government. This kind of thing. And I'm sure it's the same, if you go first to your strategic partners and consult with them and then come up with a decision, it would have a completely different effect than it has now. And I'm afraid if Russia, again, these small things will do, it's only going to add up in getting Georgia's image ruined worldwide, unfortunately.
Fady, what should the government be doing that it is not doing in these circumstances, considering what each and every of our strategic partner also considers, that Georgia is not it is even in a very tough situation, facing Russia, of course, and its threats?
Look, Georgia, first of all, should be conscious of its size and of its geopolitical weight. Georgia cannot play the same game as Turkey. Turkey is a very heavyweight. Erdogan is a very influential president. Turkey is about 100 million people, and it's a member of NATO. Georgia cannot be Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia have the largest oil deposit in the world. It's not Qatar, which has the largest gas. Okay. And what the Prime Minister and the government is doing is just revolving, flying from one country of those to the other one, trying to say we are non-aligned countries like those countries. So first of all, the government should realize that Georgia is very small geographically and geopolitically. And it has signed a candidate or applied for candidacy with the EU, and has a deep and comprehensive free trade agreement with the EU and an association agreement with the EU. It has very close links with the US that have been the #1 partners of Georgia, and that Georgia has to take all those things into consideration. And if Georgia wants to be neutral, this is very good. But between being neutral and being negatively neutral, there is a very big difference. Today, Georgia is being negatively neutral because with their neutrality, they are undermining the agenda of the West towards Russia. They need to be neutral without undermining the... I was the first one in Georgia to say, no, Georgia shouldn't slap sanctions on Russia. The first one, from the very first day, and people got angry at me. Because, you know, I'm a rational person. What can our sanctions do? But at the same time, we should not go to bed with Russia, okay? Under the eyes of the EU, okay, and give them the finger. We cannot do things like this. So the government, if they continue like this, the more radical they are, the faster they will be out of power. You know, there is an Oriental proverb that says you cannot oppose an ice pick. You know, this ice pick that breaks the... you cannot oppose an ice pick with your eye. Today, the government is opposing an ice pick, which is the West, with their eye. Their eye is going to be poked. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see how this is going to end.
John, I will give you time also to sum up our conversation. And what do you think should be the main message when we are speaking of this war, when we're speaking of this geopolitical shift, bringing its challenges but also opportunities that we clearly see for Georgia? What should be the main message towards investors and investment in
I'm
Georgia?
going to give you an answer. What my companies, my businesses who are members demanding me to do. They say to me from John, make sure that you as the president of the European Business Association, that you represent our companies to say that we want to go to Europe, we want to have more business, so we want to go to the European way. They're asking us to do this through platforms, public-private dialogue with government. They want to do this in Brussels also to communicate their voice, because they notice this, and they
and
also.
You're doing this now in
I'm
this
doing this
studio
on
as
a
well.
daily base. I'm here not sitting as John. I'm here sitting as representing these companies who's demanding this from me, and I will always do that because that's my task as a president of the association. And when they are asking me that, it's an emotional thing also. We're in Georgia. Everything is in emotions, but they really, when they have meetings with the EU ambassador also, they're talking emotion. We want the European Union. This is our voice. We want it, and it's our task from the business to make sure that this gets on the right track to get, and we will do whatever we can to work on the business.
The question is what we can. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking my questions.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.